In the aftermath of World War II, a construction worker laying foundation for a new building on the site of the destroyed Warsaw Ghetto came across a container buried in the earth. Inside were manuscripts written in Hebrew characters which were taken to the Jewish Historical Institute of Warsaw. At the top of the bundle was a cover letter written in Yiddish, beginning with the word attention in large characters, punctuated by 3 bold exclamation points. The letter read, "By the grace of God, I respectfully request the honored individual that will find my following writings to be so kind as to take the trouble to forward them to the land of Israel to the following address, Rabbi Isaiah Shapira, Tel Aviv, Palestine. When, with God's compassion, I and the remaining Jews will survive the war, I request that everything be returned to me or to the Warsaw Rabbinate. May God have mercy on us, the remnant of Israel, wherever we may be. May God spare us, grant us life, and save us in the twinkling of an eye." These are the last words we have written by the hand of the Hasidic luminary, Rabbi Kalmanus Kalman Shapira, who served as the chief rabbi of the Warsaw Ghetto. The letter was dated January 1943. A few months later, Rabbi Shapira was deported along with the last few fighters of the Warsaw Ghetto uprising. He was murdered by the Nazis later that year. The manuscripts did make it to Israel into the hands of Rabbi Shapira's brother. They turned out to be a series of sermons on the weekly Torah portion, which the great rabbi had preached in secret in the ghetto between 1939 and 1942. It was later published under the title Eish Kodesh, Holy Fire. I'd like to tell you about one of those sermons because I think the holy fire he wrote about burns just as brightly today. In 1940, the Shabbat of Passover began on April 26th, 84 years ago today. Rabbi Shapira delivered his sermon on a section of this week's special Torah reading from the book of Exodus. This scene takes place just after the incident of the golden calf, an event that struck at the foundation of the relationship between God and the Israelites. The people had lost faith in God, and God in return had lost faith in them. After talking God off the ledge and convincing God to accept the people's repentance, Moses was exhausted. He had seen the people's failure and God's burning anger, and he was scared for his future and theirs. It's one of the lowest points of his life. In that despair, Moses begs God, "Please let me have a vision of your glory." God replies, "I will make all my goodness pass before you. I will have mercy and show kindness to whomever I desire, but you cannot have a vision of my face. A person cannot have a vision of me and still exist. See, there is a place near me. Station yourself on the rock. When my glory passes by, I will place you in a crevice in the rock, protecting you with my hand until I pass by. I will then remove my hand and show you only my back. My essence itself will not be seen." It's a befuddling story. It seems an inopportune moment for Moses to be asking God for favors while God's anger is still flaring. And yet God indulges Moses, though not in the way that Moses had expected. And what is all of this about God's face and God's hand and God's back? Rabbi Shapira understands this is a description of the many ways we encounter God, and especially how we might find God in our moments of trial and challenge. What happens when we are at our lowest point, when God feels distant or hidden? Like the psalmist who writes, "From the depths I called to you." Like Moses after the golden calf, we sometimes feel as if we are calling out of the abyss. First, Rabbi Shapira addresses Moses' request. He quotes a passage in the Talmud where the rabbis are interpreting a phrase from elsewhere in the Bible where it says, "V'yitpalel elav v'yi'ater lo," and he prayed and God answered. But one of the rabbis reads it not as v'yi'ater, but v'yichtar, meaning to tunnel. A person prays from the depths of their despair. They feel as if they are buried under dirt or rubble. And what they do not yet know is that the divine is tunneling towards them, closing the perceived distance between them, reaching out God's hand. Perhaps this is what the Amidah means when it says that God keeps faith with those who sleep in the dust. There are times when we are so deep in it that we may be unable to feel that God is tunneling towards us. And we may start to think that the problem lies in us. We may start to feel that we are unworthy of God's presence. We tell ourselves, maybe this challenge, this hardship we face is a punishment. God has put us in this place. God has hidden God's face from us. This is why God tells Moses, I will show mercy and kindness to those I choose. God says, you may feel unworthy in the moment, but that's not up to you. I care about you because I care about humanity. And so I reach out my hand to you, not because you are worthy or unworthy, but because you are you and I love you. There is no depth to which you can sink where you will be unworthy of that love. And yet, even having heard this, God still feels distant. Moses still wants to witness God's glory. And perhaps Moses still feels distant because he is looking for the wrong signs of God. Moses wants to see God's face, the full force of God in the universe. Moses wants to see the miracles that he witnessed as the Israelites left Egypt, God's signs and wonders, God's mighty arm. Where is the God who parted the sea? But that's not how we usually experience God. We do not cross the sea every day, maybe not even once in a lifetime. And this is especially not how we find God in the depths. If you are in a time of struggle and you are praying for a miracle, for you to be unfired, for the pandemic to have never happened, for God to reverse a diagnosis or bring a deceased loved one back, you are likely to be disappointed. God does not show God's face in that way, but it can feel like God is ignoring our prayers. No, says God, you can only see my back. You can only see my after effects. It's not the big earth-shattering miracles. It's the small ripples of my presence that you can only see if you know where to look. So stand there in the cleft of the rock, and I will pass before you, and you will not see my glory. You will witness only the echoes of my presence, and maybe that will be enough. But even when we know that we will only see God's after effects, we are still tempted to look for the massive miracles. So Rabbi Shapiro calls our attention to God's hand covering Moses. He quotes another section of the Talmud. The rabbis are interpreting a phrase from Song of Songs where Israel asks God, set us as a seal upon your heart, as a seal upon your arm. God responds, my beloved daughter, you ask the wrong question. A heart can never be seen while in the body, and arms are so often covered. Why would you want me to inscribe a seal between us on a part of me you might never see? No, says God, quoting Isaiah, I will write our promise on the palms of my hands so that they are never covered. Rabbi Shapiro writes, this hints to us that even when we experience God's hiddenness and endure physical and spiritual troubles, we should not allow into our hearts the thought that we are hidden, God forbid, from God. For even when the palm is doing the concealing, there is still that level of on the palms of my hands, because we are carved into the palms themselves. It is the ultimate closeness, such that we can never be utterly hidden. This is what God has said to Moses from the beginning, though it takes the whole ordeal for Moses to appreciate it. When Moses asks God to reveal God's self, God's first response is, Hine makom iti. See, there is a place here with me. Come and stand on the rock. The word makom, place, is also one of God's names. And it's the name of God we use at times of illness and distress, when we long to feel God's presence, like God is right there next to us. Hine makom iti, God says to Moses, here in this place, be with me. Rabbi Toba Spitzer writes, God is inviting Moses into a very intimate place. Hine makom iti, here in this place you will find compassion and loving kindness and endless mercy. And what is this place? It exists right here in me, in you. And as we expand our own capacity for compassion, compassion for ourselves, compassion for others, we create a makom of refuge that we carry within us at all times. God is all of it. God is the miraculous presence we cannot see, and God is the reverberations of that presence that echo through the world and which hint to us that God was here in this place even if we did not know it. And God is also the hand that shields us and reminds us of a promise made to keep us in love, a promise that will never be concealed. And God is also the cleft of the rock that holds us and invites us into makom presence, that tells us that we are not alone. And God is the rock itself, something we can lean on when we are too weary to stand. This is how Rabbi Shapira ends his sermon, with Moses leaning against the rock. He says that this hints that one can be strong and upstanding even at times of hiddenness. God strengthens Moses by reminding Moses that he can strengthen himself, that all of us can. We are in the holiday of Passover, a time of liberation and celebration, but our Torah reading comes not from the story of the Exodus, but from the beginning of the Israelites wandering in the wilderness to remind us that there is a long way between liberation and redemption. There will be challenges and hardships. We do not cross the sea or reach the promised land every day. Mostly we wander. And in this moment of challenge, in this long, dark night, we can strengthen ourselves knowing that God is tunneling towards us even if we cannot see it. And God is holding us up even if we cannot feel it. And God is with us even if we do not believe it. As the rabbi of the Warsaw Ghetto, Kalonymus Kalman Shapira, knew the darkness and the hiddenness all too well. He felt the despair and the longing in the story of Moses as his own. And like Moses, he did not live to see the promised land, but he left us a message buried in the rubble. It's a message of hope. It's a message of comfort. And it's a reminder that even in the darkness, we are never alone. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.